Greetings. Welcome to the next class in the series on the alphabet for soup for the soul. Today we'll be doing the letter Dalet, the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In the story of creation, as we go through the days from day one of light and dark, the first night and day, and then day two, the separation of the waters above from the waters below. And day three, the separation or gathering together of the waters to make room for dry land. And on day four, you have the sun, moon, and stars. I have an image of that in the stained glass behind me. The 11 stars and sun coming through and the moon at the bottom. And the Torah tells us that the sun and the moon and the stars were created in order for humans to track the time and seasons and holidays. Time measured through days and months and weeks and years and jubilees, cycles of 50-year and centuries. These are measures of change. On the fourth day, the letter Dalet represents the number 4. On the fourth day, we are invited into a world in which change and evolution is part of the fabric of creation, movement and growth. So let's look at the letter Dalet that represents this number 4, the sound D, and also it represents the idea of developmental drive. So the shape of the Dalet, it's really quite easy to draw. Got a horizontal line and a vertical line. A Dalet, like that. It can be doubled. It's one of the doubling letters. You put a dot in it and you get it doubled. And the Dalet, you can see, looks like, if I add another sort of thinner line here, you can create a door frame. Right? A straight line there with a header and two sides. So the door frame, the door is the Hebrew word, to say door is the Hebrew word Dalet. That's where you get the name of the letter Dalet, is from the door. In cursive, you write a Dalet like this, okay, if you're writing cursive. And again, it has the sound of the D, of the D. Okay. In older forms of Hebrew and in later evolutions from Hebrew, like Greek, the shape of a Dalet looked more like a tent door, or like that. And you may know that symbol, the Greek symbol, the delta. We'll come to that as well. So, in talking about the letter Dalet, there's a lot of pieces we can reflect on. Like I mentioned before, on the fourth day, with the earth now established, now we're putting the earth in relationship to the sun, moon, and stars, which are measures of change, how we measure this change in the cycles of nature and season, but also annually how we measure our own growth and evolution. So the Dalet, which is represented or drawn as an open door or an open door frame, represents evolution, change, right? The delta. So where does change happen? One of the metaphors we use to describe change is a doorway, a threshold for change, moving from one space to another. Like a new chapter in life, you go from one space to another, moving. Even the word for a door frame in Hebrew, a mezuzah, has at its root the word zuz or zaz, which means to move, literally to move. How interesting that the solidity of a door frame, right, which is right the safest place to be when there's an earthquake, is named with the word for movement, for transition, for change. So Dalet is all about transformation. So what do we change? Who are we changing? And what does the language that we're given, this alphabet that we're given, how can it help move us in the right kind of change? So as I mentioned, the fourth letter of the alphabet, Dalet, represents the number 4 as well. And 4 is a recurring number in Jewish tradition. We have in Passover, the 4 cups and the 4 questions and 4 different responses to the questions, 4 different tellings of the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And, of course, Passover represents this shift, this new birth, creation of a new nation. There's the 4-lettered name for God, right? Yud He Vav He, or which we pronounce as Adonai, which also has 4 letters, which is the unpronounceable name, right? We don't say that name, and Adonai shows up at these periods of transition in human history and evolution. The transition from slavery to freedom sort of begins when God appears to Moses at the burning bush and reveals this 4-letter name for God. There are also 4 matriarchs, or 4 primary matriarchs according to tradition. Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. They're used in the blessings for daughters at the Shabbat table. And they're coupled with the 3 matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to do a collective of 7. There's also 4 worlds in Kabbalah, the tradition that all of existence is a refraction into 4 different worlds. So you have the worlds of Asiyah, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilut. One way to translate these is as the physical dimension of existence, the emotional or fluid aspect of existence, the intellectual realm, and the spiritual realm, which sort of encapsulates the other 3. So physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual, Asiyah, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilut. And change, according to the Tree of Life images in the Kabbalah, happen through a flow through these 4 worlds. So, and we think of like if we wanted to change a habit or change a way we behave or an attribute of our character, that we might start with the physical act. If I want to try to practice being more generous, for instance, I would start with physically, doing more generous things or saying more words of praise more readily. And that, we hope, would shape and move our emotional space to feel more generous. And then, of course, you can combine the intention to be more generous, which is intellectual, with those other 2 to transform the nefesh, transform the self all together in the spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and physical. How they come together. They're all different expressions of the same reality on different levels. We have parallels to those 4 worlds, those Dalet Olamot, the teachings and traditions recorded as. We have parallels in the study of Scripture. So each verse, each word, each letter of Torah can be interpreted on at least 4 different layers or levels. So and they parallel the ones in the 4 worlds. Those 4 levels of interpretation are Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. You can translate them as the literal meaning, the most obvious sort of surface meaning. Remez means a hint or an allegorical meaning. So maybe the snake in the Garden of Eden refers to something else besides an actual physical snake, as well as the snake. A drash, and I translate it here as applicable, sometimes people translate it as homiletical, and it's the attempt to apply what we're reading to our own lives, or find connections between different passages or readings or words in the Torah, or between the Torah and our words. So drash is seeking out, literally seeking out a new meaning. And I highlight that with capitals because, of course, it begins with the letter Dalet, drash. And the last is Sod. Sod means a secret or a hidden element. So sod represents the mystical meaning. Sometimes that's a gematria, sort of a numerical equivalent, or some reference to a deeper understanding of psyche and God. So together, if you take the first letters of each of those words, pshat, remez, drash, and sod, you can combine them with the four-letter word pardes. And pardes literally means orchard. It's a loan word from Persian language, and we've borrowed it into English as well, and with the word paradise, pardes, paradise. In Hebrew and in Persian, it meant an orchard, a beautiful, lush garden with trees, an orchard. So drash, this aspect of the four worlds in the intellectual that is applies to the understanding of the letter Dalet because of the seeking, the striving after meaning, right? The Dalet represents that striving after meaning and purpose, an endpoint, a destination. It is destination driven. So there are lots of words that begin with the letter Dalet that we can play with. Of course, the name of the letter Dalet comes from the word Dalet, which means door, or daltot is a way to say doors in Hebrew. And again, that is another symbol or representative of change as a threshold or a transition. The word derech means a way or a road. Likewise, a sort of path to a new future. The word darash, which we mentioned when we talked about drash in the four levels of interpretation, is a verb that means in general to seek, like dorshe tzedek means seekers of justice, or dorshe derech, to combine these last two words, means seekers of a way. Another word or combination of words that have two-letter Dalets in them is the word dod, or dodi, or dodati. So dod is like an expression of endearance, a dear one, a beloved. Dodi li va'ani lo. I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me, from the Song of Songs. It also means uncle, or doda is aunt. So it's a term of expression and closeness, and it's presumed that expression was used in the Middle East and still is today, not just to refer to the siblings of your parents, but also to a dear friend, a friend of the family, a doda or dodati. Da'at is one of the sfirot, or sort of a sphira referenced in the Tree of Life, and it means to know. La da'at is to know in Hebrew, or ani yodea. So seeking to know, striving to get to know one another, ourselves, God. Da'at nafshecha, and we say in Musar, get to know your soul, is a common expression. And one of the qualities of character that we refer to often is hod, or hodaya. Hodaya, that's where we get the word todah, and hodu, like from the Psalms, hodu ladonai kitov, give thanks to God, for God is good. Todah rabbah, thank you very much, has this dalet in it. So there's the sense that gratitude, a practice of gratitude, can change us from the inside out, right? We can grow a sense of abundance and joy and simplicity and appreciation by practicing gratitude, by offering thanks. Speech has the power to change us. In spiritual practice, in many cultures, there's this practice of a mantra or a focus phrase, something we repeat to ourselves as a daily reminder of what we're working on. Maybe we're working on hodaya, being grateful. And the word for speech in Hebrew is dibur. And there's lots of variations of that. A davar is a word, or it can be a thing or a matter, a topic. Divarim is the plural for words. We use that word when we recite the Shema. and it's also the name of one of the books of the Torah. Eile Devarim, these are the words, is how the fifth book of the Torah begins, and Devarim means books, or words. A few more Dalet words. Lidor vador is a common expression from generation to generation, and also has this sense of transmission and change, right? We move from one generation to another generation, and this is the process of evolution. Torah changes in each generation and evolves. Of course, culture and family and legacies from the past, passed from generation to generation, are not static, they evolve. So a dor is a generation. The Hebrew word for earth is a combination, or is built around the word for blood. Dam is the word for blood in Hebrew. According to the Torah verses, there was a belief that the soul of an animal or a person resides in its dam, in its blood. It sort of flows through the body. And Adama is earthling, Adam is earthling, and Adama is the earth. So Adama is another word, and of course the earth is a place where we can see and measure change in the seasons, in the years, as well as we see trees grow and can measure change that way. And the last one, word I'll use is demute. Demute means likeness. So in Genesis it teaches that human beings are made in the image and the likeness of God. B'tselem Elohim, udemut Elohim, and the likeness of God. And tradition offers us this interpretation that the Tselem Elohim refers to the innate divine image that we are. As conscious beings, as being alive, we are deserving of inherent respect and dignity. So the Tselem Elohim is a remembrance that as we are, who we are, is sacred, is worthy of respect and love, because we are made in the image of God. Everyone is an expression or an imaging of the divine, like a hologram of God. The demut Elohim means the likeness of God. So our understanding of that is that we are, as humans, given this innate awareness and innate sort of sanctity, the spark of God, that no one can take away. Every morning it's pure. And we are called upon to strive to be in the likeness of God, to identify the qualities of the divine qualities, the qualities of godliness, like we mentioned generosity when we did the Gimel, or compassion, or honesty, or integrity, or equanimity. These qualities that we might associate with godliness, we can strive to embody in our own lives. That we are B'tselem Elohim, and we are called upon to grow our souls, to grow the nefesh soul, one aspect of soul, to be more and more like our highest image of ourselves, or the divine image, right? Ourselves as reviewed in God's vision for who we can become. So dmiut is the likeness, right? Those we strive to be like. So two examples from the Torah of characters who have the letter Dalet prominent in their names and are often looked to as exemplars are David, or David, and Devorah. So David, his name comes from that word we use, dod, or David, or dodi, which means a dear one or beloved. And Devorah is a bumblebee. Devorah is a bee. David, most are aware that it was the young shepherd who was called upon to take up the reins of leadership for the people and became the king of Israel, perhaps the most prominent king of Israel ever, King David, who united the 12 tribes of Israel. And in addition to that strength of leadership, he also had this gift with poetry and song, with words, with dibur, with speech. It was said that Saul, the king prior to him, called upon David to play his instrument and to sing and offer his comforting words whenever he felt agitated or couldn't sleep. And we have a whole collection of poetry attributed to David and music that is the Psalms. So David is a creative writer and also a courageous leader, right? Standing up to the giant Goliath with only a slingshot and a stone, or a few stones. Devorah, less is known perhaps about Devorah for most folks. In the book of Judges, Devorah also, there's a song about Devorah and her leadership. She was at once a prophetess and a judge and a general. Like David, sort of captivated and guided the world around him or her with being a sort of Renaissance woman by being able to excel in different fields. Again, Devorah was a judge, a warrior, general, and a prophet who could really foresee what was coming by a careful attention to perhaps the four worlds simultaneously existing. So we can strive in our lives to live up to the examples, or to approach the examples of David and Deborah, and more fully embody the Dalet, which represents this developmental drive, the striving to grow ourselves, our souls, reaching like with a yad, right? Yad also begins or ends with a Dalet, reaching with a yad for bettering ourselves and stepping through that next doorway, courageous enough to brave the unknown, to evolve ourselves and our world, to achieve delta, change, transformation on a personal level, on a communal level, organizational level, and a global level. So may our association with this sound, this delightful sound, help us to embody the attributes, the instincts to grow ourselves and to develop our world into a place of peace. Cheers.